possible answers for the January 2025 Human and Social Biology Paper 2. This is the latest exam in HSB that just passed at the CSEC level this January, and we want to look at what could have been answers that you could have given to secure your marks in this paper. It starts off with the usual instructions. It tells you 2 hours, and the paper has 6 questions, and you are expected to do all 6 questions, even though the 6th question comes in 2 sections. Yeah. So let's start off with question 1. And it reads, define the term balanced diet. And we know a balanced diet, you have to have the correct proportions of the nutrients. Yeah. So once you give that, you get your 2 marks. It continues on to ask you to identify the component in a balanced diet that cannot be digested. And I hope everyone is thinking about the fiber, the roughage that you get from fruits and vegetables. Yeah. And this is because the beta bonds in the cellulose cannot be broken down by macroorganisms. So 1 mark for just identifying that component. Anorexia and bulimia are 2 common eating disorders. State 1 similarity and 1 difference between the 2. A similarity, and there are quite a few. You would just require to identify 1. I would give you more than 1. In fact, so both are eating disorders. Let's start with that. Both are eating disorders. Both lead to malnourishment, meaning you do not receive the correct amount of nutrients required. The outcome is the same where the person feels like they want to be skinnier or they think they're too fat. Those are similarities between these 2. They ask for 1 difference, 1 similarity. If you give more than 1, the maximum amount of mark you could get is only for 1. Yeah? So moving on to the difference. Anorexia refuses to consume. Bulimia, it consumes and then expels. They could expel by using laxatives. Some persons do vomiting. Yeah. So it have different ways to expel, but the outcome is the same in that the nutrients, you don't get to absorb the nutrients, you don't get to use the nutrients because it's a disorder. All right. So 3 marks for that question. And this doesn't mean that these are the only differences you could have put. You could have chosen other differences as well. Yeah. So we have figure 1 and figure 2, which shows the nutritional facts for 2 snacks, A and B. Study the information provided in each label and answer the questions that follow. So you would have taken some time to examine the nutritional facts for each snacks. We see serving size, calories, total fats. You would have read it and compared it one to the other, right? So the question asks, suggest which of the 2 snacks, A and B, is the healthier option. And a quick glance at this, a nice study of this, in fact, will lead you to believe that snack A is the healthier option. State 4 reasons to justify your response in B, Roman numeral 1. It means this one, why did you choose A? Yeah, you need to justify, give your reasoning. And if you compare this, basically compare and contrast which one is healthier versus which one is not as healthy. So let me give some responses. We see that even something such as dietary fiber, look at it. In snack A, it's 3.7 grams or 13%. In snack B, 0. You need fiber in your diet. Yeah, vitamins B, A, C. This one, vitamin D, it's still 0%, right? So it has no A and C. So vitamins valuable. Look at minerals. It has calcium, it has iron, it has potassium. This one, it's written with calcium and iron and potassium, but they are 000. All right. So even the amount of calories is different, right? So all of these are reasons. I know they only ask for four, but there's more than four. As I said, if you put more than four, that doesn't mean you get more marks. I am just giving more than four. Yeah. In the Caribbean, it is recommended that individuals consume a diet consisting of foods from each of the six Caribbean food groups. Recommend two Caribbean food groups from which a laborer should consume higher amounts in order to ensure good health. So we know that the laborer requires carbohydrates and proteins. Now they are telling you Caribbean food groups. So where do you get carbohydrates and proteins? I hope persons are thinking meat. Yeah, meat. So you could even identify what kinds of meats found in the Caribbean. We know we have chicken, we have beef. That's okay. Carbohydrates. You know you have provisions. Yeah, all the potato, the eddos, the yam, all of that will come in the carbohydrates. Yeah, and they put it Caribbean just to get you to, when you're giving your examples, to give localized, Caribbeanized examples if you gave examples for this question. You can let us know which kind of examples you gave in the chat, which Caribbean foods. We are all doing the exam in different islands. Let your favorite principal know which Caribbean foods you got your carbohydrates and your proteins from. State one reason for each recommendation made in C1. All right. So why did you recommend the carbohydrates, whether it was rice, macaroni? Why did you recommend proteins? And he needs the carbs for the energy. Yeah. The energy. You could link it to his job, being a laborer, and he needs the protein for the muscle. Yeah. He does physical work. So the muscle mass is very important when you're using your body to do physical labors. So that will give you 15 marks from question one. Obviously, question one came from the nutrition, which is a section B topic. Yeah. Moving on to question two. And it asks, state the difference between excretion and elimination. This automatically moves your mind to understand that the question is excretion, homeostasis, osmoregulation. That's another topic from section B. So we see straight off the bat, they are covering the section B questions one time, back to back. So excretion, the removal of metabolic waste from the body, and elimination is the removal of unwanted substances, right? Remember, some things could be wanted at a period of time, but then at another time, it's not wanted. Think of water. At certain times, you may want water, but if you have too much, the body might need to get rid of some. So yeah, I gave the example, feces, water, it could be nitrogenous waste. All of them require elimination. So that's why I'm giving an example for elimination for your clarity. 2 marks for that question. Other than the kidney, name 2 excretory organs in the body and state 1 excretory product from each named organ. So we could put it out like this. We have the skin and sweat being produced from the skin. We have the lungs, and we have stale air or carbon dioxide coming out from the lungs. 4 marks. You just have to put one each. Yeah, so you could see how easy it is to get a mark. Skin, 1 mark. Sweat, 1 mark. Lungs, 1 mark. Stale air, 1 mark. Expired air, you could use the different synonyms that you know. Figure 3 shows a diagram of a nephron of a kidney. We have the Bowman's capsule, they're showing the glomerulus. Yeah, we know this is part of the excretion topic. So the lead up to the question, blood is filtered from the glomerulus and the filtrate enters the Bowman's capsule. List in the correct order the 4 structures after the Bowman's capsule through which the filtrate will pass as urine is being formed. So you have to list it in the correct order. If you do not list it in the correct order, then you are losing marks. So we have from the Bowman's capsule, we're going to the first convoluted tubule. You might know this as the proximal convoluted tubule. Then to the loop of Henle here, we go to the second convoluted tubule before going to the collecting duct. Yeah, so the marks, the 4 structures are identified there. We know we're starting off at the Bowman's capsule and ending at the collecting duct. It goes on to say in part C, table 1 shows the concentration of 3 substances found in the filtrate and the urine of a healthy individual. Explain why glucose is found in the filtrate but not in the urine. And this is in a healthy individual. So there should be no glucose in the urine, but it will be in the filtrate because in the glomerulus, it is filtered out into the Bowman's capsule, and then it is reabsorbed through selective reabsorption. You know that happens in the first or proximal convoluted tubule. Explain why protein is found in neither the filtrate nor the urine. Again, this is a healthy individual, but protein is not filtered out of the glomerulus. Yeah, protein, you don't want protein leaving the blood because remember, your cells, the antibodies, all of that is protein. So could you imagine if that was filtering out from your glomerulus? It means you are not a healthy individual and you would be running into problems. And that is our excretion section B life processes questions. Both section B questions are gone. So we are up to 30 marks and we are moving on to question 3. Do remember to subscribe to the channel as a way of encouraging us to continue to do these videos. You could also give it a like if you are in favor of these answers that you're getting. And do let us know what answers you were putting for what questions. We have not used the exhaustive list. There are still more answers that could be put in some specific questions. Question 3. State 2 ways in which genetic variation occurs in living organisms. And the mere fact they mentioned genetic variation means we know that this question is from section C of the syllabus, genetics, variation, hereditary. That is our topic of focus for this question 3. So, 2 genetic variation, 2 ways in which it happens. So we are choosing crossing over and random assortment. Yeah. If it's variation, we know they are interested in meiosis. B, complete the following paragraph by inserting the correct word from the list of words provided below. And you just read the paragraph and it must make grammatical sense as well. So the process where organisms with, and the word we'll insert there is favorable traits, are more likely to reproduce is called natural selection. So we will insert natural selection there. These traits are passed to the next what? To the next generation. So we will insert the word generation there. Over time, this process allows organisms to something to their environment. And the word that we are going with is adapt to their environment. 4 marks, 4 words, 4 marks. Figure 4 shows a picture of 5 children with different characteristics. And the question goes on to ask you in Roman numeral 1. Identify 2 examples of continuous variation that can be observed in figure 4. And there are some obvious ones, and we want to put in some not so obvious ones straight off the bat as well, just to make it fun. So we have the obvious ones: skin color, hair length. I think those are the most obvious ones. The shape and size of the face is obvious as well. We have height. Not too sure if all of them are standing straight up, but you could tell that some of them are crouched over. Eye distance, eye size, smile shape, nose shape, neck length. Those are just some of them. There can be more. If the more you look at the picture, the more you will be able to see. Yeah, but they only asked for 2. We were just having fun with the question. Identify the example of discontinuous variation in figure 4. Now, they're asking you for just one example, and they are hoping that you will identify sex. Some are male, some are female. That one is very obvious. But we are looking at the earlobes, and we could see that this one is detached and his own looks kind of attached. So we included it as an option there as well. But it's only for 1 mark. You don't have to spend so much time. And I hope persons didn't spend too much time in the exam adding too much answers, because the marks are fixed. So no matter how many characteristics, how many variation traits you add in, you could only get 2 marks for the continuous and 1 mark for the discontinuous. The table below shows 2 scenarios. For each scenario in the table, use a tick to show whether antibiotics should be used. Give 1 reason for each response. So we have Ravi, he contracted influenza at school. Can you use antibiotics for it? No. Why? Because influenza is caused by a virus. Antibiotics treat bacteria. All right, so we could actually use a tick. And hit no. And for Mitch has been diagnosed with syphilis. So we know the pallidum is a bacteria, so we are going with yes. You could use antibiotics to treat Treponema pallidum for syphilis. Yeah, so we are going with yes for that one. Explain why the misuse of antibiotics is a dangerous practice, because it could lead to infections that are resistant to antibiotics. Antibiotic resistant bacteria is a real thing that could develop, because when you stop the full course, or you only use it for some and not the full way, some bacteria can survive and develop resistance to the antibiotics. 15 marks for that question 3. That was the section C question. Let's look at what question 4 brings, and straight away we see the equation for photosynthesis for question 4. So we know they are testing section A information from the syllabus. So let's go with the question. Name the process represented by the equation above. Yeah, photosynthesis. 1 mark. State the function of the process represented by the equation above. And we know this is how plants produce their food. All right, the plants producing glucose, which will be stored as starch. Part 3, identify the cell organelle in which the process represented by the equation above occurs. So everything is tying back to this equation. So the organelle is chloroplast. That's a simply easy one. So far, they're giving away marks. That's 3 marks we collected very easily there. And the next question, identify the pigment responsible for capturing light in the process shown in the equation above. And if you mention chloroplast, you must know chlorophyll. State the name of each of the products shown in the equation above. If you just look at the equation, you know the left-hand side is the reactants. The products are on the right-hand side. C6H12O6, that's glucose, and the 6O2 is oxygen. So you just write in the names of them, glucose and oxygen. 2 marks. So far we have been collecting those marks. This question is a sockeye question. Explain how each of the products shown in the equation on page 13 is critical to the survival of the other organism. So you know this is page 14. The number of the page is always right here. So you know that is the previous equation that we have been talking about, photosynthesis. What's the product's value? Yeah, glucose is fuel for animals to produce energy. You know that is the fuel for respiration, aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration as well. And oxygen is needed to complete the respiration. Yeah. So 4 marks. 4 marks if you explain this out. And they do give you space to write. They do give you space to write. So we go to part C of the question. An agricultural engineer is developing 2 different varieties of sweet potato, A and B, as shown in figure 5 and 6. And we see figure 5 have non-variegated leaves. Figure 6 has variegated leaves. Explain which variety, A or B, is likely to produce a greater yield of sweet potato. And we are going with A. And why are we choosing A? Because with more photosynthesis being done in the leaves, it means more glucose being created. And we know glucose is stored in plants as starch. The polysaccharide for plants to store is starch. So hence the sweet potato will be larger, will be more than in variety B. So A is our answer. And let me just make sure separated so that we know that it's A is chosen and it's not just part of the sectors. The question continues that suggest the test the engineer would have to conduct to confirm the major food group found in the sweet potatoes. Well, I already mentioned starch, so you know it is a starch test that the engineer would perform. 15 more marks as we end question 4. We are now entering section B. So there are 2 questions in this section B. So question 5, during the rainy season, governments are very concerned about the spread of vector-borne viruses. Well, not viruses, diseases. Define the term vector. Yeah, what's a vector? This organism could transmit the pathogen and it will not endanger itself. Yeah. And they ask you in B1, one mosquito-borne disease that is common in the Caribbean. And you could choose any, you could choose any. There are quite a bit that you could choose from. We choose dengue, you could choose chikungunya, you could choose Zika, you could choose malaria, you could choose whichever one you want. And the question links it. Describe how the disease named in B1, see the link, is transmitted. So in our case, it will be how is dengue transmitted? And we know that is from an infected Aedes mosquito through the bite. All right. We do mention Aedes because our own is dengue fever. If you chose malaria, you know that you have to mention Anopheles. All right. State one sign or symptom of the disease. The interesting part about choosing dengue, do note that dengue hemorrhagic fever is different from dengue fever. So if you chose dengue hemorrhagic fever, the easiest sign will be to mention the bleeding. But if you choose dengue fever, you can't mention the bleeding, right? So you could mention joint pain or the other flu-like symptoms. But if you mention, remember, it's all connected. Look, they still put in the B Roman numeral 1. So we definitely know it's connected. So it must line up. Part C, compare and contrast the life cycle of a mosquito with that of a housefly. And you know, one student told me that they drew something. And I was like, oh, did you have so much time? And she was like, yes, sir, the exam was easy. And I was like, all right, no problem. You can draw. Some persons could have done tables, so we will just write it out simply for you. The mosquito and the housefly. The mosquito, the straight steps, the adult lays eggs, the eggs develop into larva, the larva become pupa, pupa turn into adult. You know this is this cycle. For the housefly, we know the adult lays eggs. We have the larva, but the larva stage is broken up into three. First insta, second insta, third insta. The larva, the third insta, develops into the pupa. The pupa goes back to the adult, right? You could even go on to mention the timeline, and the timeline is similar, right? It's about 10 days for both the mosquito and the housefly on average, about 7 to 10 days-ish. You could even, if you could have drawn cycles and showed that the first insect to the second insect takes about a day and a half, right? That would have been fine as well. But we are just writing out for simplicity. 5 marks. Recommend 4 ways in which communities and governments can reduce the transmission of diseases by mosquitoes and houseflies. And the first one I always tell students to put education. Put education first. Spray cycles by authorities where they come wrong and they use these very industrial sprays and they spray the whole neighborhood. You can have spray cycles, cleanup campaigns to remove breeding sites, the use of preventative devices, traps. You know those electricity traps. Some of them come in rackets where you see the mosquito and basically you're hunting the mosquito, trying to swipe it with the racket. Yeah, all of that is preventative devices that you could use. Yeah, so I just gave some examples. Oh, obviously screens, mosquito net, fly screens. You could put that on your doors, on your windows to keep them out. You could sleep with mosquito nets, and you do have space to write and explain stuff if you did have that time. So this would have brought us to the end of question 5. Let's see. And that means mosquito is from section D, diseases. So let us see the final question from section E of the syllabus. Figure 7 shows various processes labeled A to E that occur in the water cycle. Identify any three of the labeled processes in figure 7. So you could just pick any three in any order and identify them. They just give you an additional note. The label letters, the letters A, B, C, D, E, you must include in your response. And we will do all for you. We will do all. So A, evaporation, we have it coming from the sea, it's going up into the air, so that's liquid turning into gas. B, we have it coming from this coconut tree, transpiration. C, we have it coming from the animals. Now, some person might think, oh, I wonder if this is sweating. But if it was sweating, then it will be evaporation again. But no, it's not sweating. Cows don't have those kinds of sweat glands. They do have sweat glands, just a very limited amount around their nose and hoofs. But otherwise, this is from respiration. This is from breathing. Remember, it's water vapor. This is a water cycle. So it's water vapor. This is respiration. It's breathing going up into the atmosphere. D, we see little lightning, right? Little drawings of lightning. So it's a thunderstorm, it's rain, precipitation. And E, we have runoff, it's on a hill, it's percolating through the earth. So that's all 5 there. They only require you to identify 3 of them. List 3 ways in which water can be purified at home. Boiling, chlorination, you know that you could use bleach, a specific amount, a measured amount, to add to a specific amount of water. Filtration, some persons may have distillation capabilities at home, depending on how tech savvy they are. You could even buy a distillation setup online. So we just included this as a fun thing. Part C shows figures 7, 8, and 9 as graphs, which show sources of pollutants at 2 different locations, X and Y. And looking at these figures, you see 60%, the majority is fertilizer for location X, and the majority, at 65%, is sewage at location Y. So they ask you, suggest the type of land use that is occurring at location X and likewise at location Y. So location Y, we have plenty fertilizer, and then the second biggest plot is animal feed. Yeah, we do have some sewage here, and the smallest amount is detergents. So with all that animal and fertilizer, we know they're doing some kind of farming, they're doing something in agriculture. And for location Y, when we look at it, we see sewage being 65%. Yeah, and then 25% is detergent. So we know some kind of urbanization has happened there. There probably could be a housing settlement, industrial settlement, right? So urbanization has developed the area in location Y. Explain 2 social or economic effects that can occur if the pollutants from location X and Y enter the waterways. So the major pollutants we see in fertilizer and animal feed and sewage and detergents entering the waterways. And we know if that happens, we're talking about eutrophication and algal bloom there to come into place. So what will happen? We expect some death of fish. That should be obvious. So it means if you depended on the waterways for fish, that's an economic resource on there. The waterways were clean and nice. People have river lines, just go by the river and do fun activities. that will be gone. And now to clean up the river, to clean up the waterways, you know, have to spend money. The government, the authorities have to spend money to clean up the area. All right, so that's an economic impact as well. They just asked for two, but we are answering questions. So, all right, so the last 3 marks before this paper ends recommend 3 strategies that could be employed to reduce the pollutants from X location and Y location. And you want to have local authorities for quick access to the area. So if you could have someone stationed there, you could have a sub-office, a grouping that they could test. They could always be testing, they could be always monitoring, it could be a continuous thing. That will be great. You need to educate the residents, the persons living there, the persons operating, those who work there, educate them about the problems if the pollutants go. You could have fines and penalties for institutions, corporations, even individuals who may be polluting and impacting the environment. You could have laws and policies based on certification. So you want to operate in this area, you need to comply with X and Y, as the case may be, to prevent and reduce pollutants going into the environment. And that's it. This was the look of some of the possible answers for the January 2025 HSB Human and Social Biology Paper 2. Do let us know in the comments what answers you would have put differently, where you went, but we did this with the intention that persons would just reflect and say, hey, I got that. That was right. I put that as my answer. I got the marks. So, from your favorite principal, ciao.